Well, welcome back. We are on week 4 of topic 3, revolutions in the early 1800s. And this week we're going to look at kind of going back to the Eastern Hemisphere. We're going to look at what Britain is doing at all, when all of this is going on through Latin American revolts, what's happening back in England. And so that's where we're going to go today. So as we looked back at last week before, we're looking at what was going on in the New World, in the Latin American areas. We're dealing mostly with Spain, France, Napoleon's doing his bit. But during this time, while Napoleon is doing his big kind of takeover, as he's starting to look towards Europe as his new empire and look away from Latin America, New World, the British have decided they're going to kind of try a little bit in the New World as well. So in 1793, they try to put down the slave revolt in Saint-Domingue, and that doesn't work. They fail miserably there. Later in 1806, they try to come in through the south, going through South America and to Buenos Aires, and that doesn't work. That fails. So all these failures in the New World, these little spankings, they just kind of go, this is not working for us. And so they begin to look eastward again, back towards their old stomping grounds. Excuse me. Back during the time of the commercial revolution, at the beginning of that. They're looking back towards the east, back towards India again, and wondering, well, is this where we are going to make our new endeavors? This is where our empire is going to be. So if you look at this particular map, this is not of Britain, this is of the British East Indian Company, their map, their trade map. And yes, they are acting on Britain's behalf, the Crown's behalf, but really this is their world right now. They are the ones that are in control. And we'll look a little bit later of why that is. But if you look, you can see the dark red, the brick-colored red. These are the areas that the East Indian Company, British East Indian Company, has control. They have dominance here. And of course, you can see in India that in the eastern part and the southern part, that's where they dominate the most. They also have a little bit down at the tip of Africa, southern Africa, and we're going to discuss that in a minute as well. So, by 1800, look at the little key there in the upper left-hand side. That's going to give you an idea of the growth. How is Britain expanding? So it starts with these two areas. Can you guess why? Why are these two areas important? How are they serving Britain at this time? Think about that for a minute. Who are the main players at this time in India? Well, you got the Mughal emperor. He's in Delhi. He's still sort of the head honcho. But everybody else in the different confederacies, in the different states, different little kingdoms, they're all sort of like paying tribute back to the Mughal emperor. Britain, and as its envoy, its representative, the British East India Company, they are pretty much in that eastern side, eastern working down into the Mysore region. The Mysore region is a Muslim community. They are very well enforced. They have a good military. They spend a lot of time fighting the British East Indian Company and Britain because they don't want to let go of that southern tip. The Maratha Confederacy is the largest section. It's that middle section of India. This is a Hindu confederacy, an agreement, a coalition, so to speak, of different provinces and leaders. They are also giving a little bit of tribute back to the Mughal emperor, as well as is Britain and the British East Indian Company. They're basically placating him so that they can get the right to operate in these regions. Now, the Mysore people, they do not recognize the Mughal emperor and are saying no, 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 no. So these are the players involved in what we're going to be talking about today. So as Britain looks back to India, back to the east to sort of start up what they hope will be a huge empire, this is the player. These are the players. Now, where is the dominance here? We got it in the East India area. I already mentioned that. But I asked you earlier, why the southern tip of Africa? What is significant there? Well, if you look at the map and you look at the trade routes, look where everybody has to stop. If they're coming from Europe, they're coming on the outside, Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, they're all coming down the western side of Africa. They have to come around that cape, that bottom tip, that southern tip, and they're going to land there. They're going to port there. They'll get supplies, they'll do some business, but in reality, this is where they're going to refuel, so to speak, even though it's all by wind at this time. But they're going to get their supplies, do some business, and they almost have to stop there. Well, Britain, if British controls that region, then they control all of the tariffs and the taxes and the port taxes. And hey, you want to stop here? That's fine. Just pay us a little extra money. So it behooves Britain, it behooves the British East Indian Company to control that southern tip, because that's part of the trade route going back and forth from East Asia, going from the Indonesia, the little islands that are trickling out, coming from China, from Japan, working into East India, coming around Africa, and coming back up. They're got to stop there, and Britain, or at least the British East Indian Company, is making bank by owning and controlling, having that dominance there in that part of Africa. So what's the situation now? What is going on? We got to go back to this. I have not brought this particular diagram up in a while, and I want you to get behind these actions and events. What is going on? Who's doing what? What's the thinking behind it? The whys. What is motivating people? Well, if you see where there is dominance here, where do you think the next move is? Where will Britain, if they're going back to this one here, they're going back, here's the situation. We got East India. We don't have India as a whole. We got the Maratha people that we got to deal with. We got this Mughal emperor that we got to deal with. And we got this Mysore people that are really wreaking havoc with us. Just constant fights and raids and things like that. What are we going to do? What's next? That's that problems and opportunities. They know that Spain is being focused in the Latin Americans. They know that France, through Napoleon and all that mess that was going on, they're dealing with that. So this gives Britain the opportunity, the chance to kind of go into, explore, expand its influence and dominance in this Asian area, this Indian area. So let's go back here. What's next? Who's going to dominate? We know we got. So who's the one that's dominating here? Where are they going to move? What's the next step? Well, looking at the map, you have that section of right above where Britain has control in India. You have the Maratha Confederacy, you got the Mughal Empire. Those territories, that land needs to be theirs. They need to get control of that in order to really truly have the resources and the access and the freedom to do what they want in India. So that's where they're likely to go. And keep this in mind though. The British East Indian Company or East India Company is not the crown. They're one of the companies. Remember this diagram? The king has access to territory. They dominate in a particular territory, and they're giving monopolies to certain companies to do business. And hopefully those companies are giving a kickback back to the king. The problem is that in India, Britain is losing control. The company is becoming so big, so powerful, and so corrupt that the king is losing business. The king is losing control. So he's got to do something to gain this back again. So there needs to be within this Britain and British East India Company some sort of resolution, something that's going to happen so that the crown, the British crown, can actually make this territory the crown territory, not a company territory. Okay? So, where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? Who's got what and what benefits, what advantages do people have? Well, Britain does have some strengths. The crown has all of its global navies. Those are pretty strong. They have some good, strong trade connections. Those are still going on. But some difficulties, some problems that they're facing as far as making India, making this territory theirs, is that the British East India Company is the one who really has the dominance. They have the presence there. It's not the crown. And this company, the people that are working in this company, are all out for themselves. It is a very individualistic focus. So they're plundering the people, they're cheating the people, there's corruption going on, there's lawlessness going on. Britain really doesn't have good control of this territory or the company. There's poverty going on, and with poverty and the plundering and the oppression, obviously the people and the natives in this area are going to look to Britain, the people behind this British East India Company, are going to look at Britain and go, well, they're the bad guys. And so the reputation, the impression that people have in India of Britain is not good. So Britain doesn't have a lot of sway or maneuverability here. Maratha Confederacy, that big group, huge military, massive military. Their military, their army is bigger than Britain's at this time in that territory. However, they have very little money. They're not collecting. Their trade is kind of poor because Britain has dominated the entire trade routes. So the Maratha Confederacy doesn't have much coming in, much revenue coming in, so it doesn't have much money. Both of these groups are almost equal in weapons, in artillery, in strategy. They've been borrowing and importing from Europe for years now. France has been helping the Maratha Confederacy. Britain has been helping the British East India Company. So military-wise, it's kind of like there's no advantage. There's no benefit. The advantage, the power to overcome and really expand to take this territory has to come some other way. So what is that way? Well, in 1780s, 1790s, Britain decides it's going to lay down some reforms. And one of the biggest reforms is they're going to appoint governor generals. These are British loyalists, British officers who are made governors within the territory in East India, as well as South Africa. But we're looking mostly at East India right now. So they're going to come in and they're going to bring that official British oversight to the East Indian territory and what's going on in these regions. They are also going to bring in new rule of law. These are going to erase all the lawlessness, the plunder, the injustices. The people who are there who are being plundered will be able to get recompense. They'll be able to get justice by going to court-appointed or British-appointed court systems and be able to get their complaints heard. The governors are going to bring in a sense of law and order. And any time that you bring in law and order, you bring in a sense of kind of like a British peace. You know, we had the Pax Romana, the Peace of Rome. It was done by military force. They just made you fear being punished if you didn't do what they wanted to, and it brought a sense of peace throughout the lands. Same sort of deal here. Britain comes in, they bring in the law, they bring in their officials, and boom, there is a sense of peace within the lands. They bring in a new system of taxes. They bring in new laws for property and how and where property can be moved and set up. And again, as I said, they bring in a series of courts to help enforce all of this. So, what happens when the stability hits? Property and finance boom. The economy booms. People want to invest in stable countries where there is law and order. And so money, economy, opportunity for finance booms during this time for Britain in this region. And that is the new situation that brings about a new opportunity, new problems. Now, Britain has some extra money to invest in its own expansion. It can invest into military. It can invest into just wheeling and dealing and negotiating with the states and the people groups in the Indian territory. So this is all brand new, awesome stuff. Sadly, the other groups do nothing. They do the same old, same old. And when they had no reform, they brought about no change, and therefore they had no advantage, no force to oppose Britain. So without that ability to fight back, to put Britain down, Britain now has an open door. And that is exactly what they do. So in 1799, British defeat the Mysore people group. They just completely dominate it, shut it down, and take over that southern tip of India and start to populate and expand on that region to dominate that region. 1802 to about 1805, British defeat the Maratha Confederacy, and they begin to move further into the Maratha territory, taking over more and more and more regions. How do they do this? Well, they had all that money, so they could basically buy loyalties. So the people that were loyal, the regions that were loyal to the Maratha Confederacy at one time got bought out. British people came in and said, hey, you back us, we'll go over and give you this extra money, we'll give you this little tribute, and you'll be better off. And sure enough, those regions flipped. Their loyalty went to Britain. They went up against the Maratha Confederacy, and the Confederacy begins to crumble because of disunity. What was once very united, there's a bug. Once it was very united and tight, and now because Britain's coming in with wheeling and dealing and throwing money around, the unity is falling apart. They're also able to buy resources, buy things that the other regions are not able to. And by the 1830s, 1850s, right around there, we end up with no more Maratha at all, and Britain owns everything. And you can look at this right here, and you can get an idea. So the key up in the top left-hand corner says that by 1850, you have those sort of pinkish brick colors. That territory, that's Australia, that's the rest of India, that's a little bit more of South Africa. These are all territories that now are completely under British control. Not just British East India Company, but Britain is the one. The Crown is the one that controls these. By 1900, you have the blue regions, and doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it make sense that if I am in control of these regions, would it not make sense that my next goal is to get that Suez Canal, to get that Egypt area? I want to control that cutting through the Mediterranean into the Red Sea and out into the Persian Gulf so that I can get a faster route to India and to the east. And look at that. That's exactly what Britain does. They know how to play this game. They have been looking at back at this one. They've been looking at this one. They know this diagram. They know what they got to be doing. They know that the next step to dominating trade, to dominating their empire, is to control that particular piece of land, that Egyptian land, so that they can get the Suez Canal built and they can make that slice into the Red Sea and then the Persian Gulf. That would cut, look how much it would cut the travel time. That would cut it way down. They don't have to go all the way down to the south tip of Africa anymore. They just come straight through. That is the goal. That's where they want to be, and they will end up getting it. They'll dominate that area, and moving into the 1900s, that is exactly what they're going to do. So, what happens? We have a new situation. Remember our little track. They've made some decisions, they've made some actions, boom, new situation in India. By the early 1800s, Muslim tradition starts to decline. Hindu tradition starts to decline because of the Maratha, Hindu, they're going away. Mysore and the Mughal Empire, they're going away. They're Muslim. So these traditions, these pieces of art and architecture and cultures are starting to go away. Britain is pouring a greater amount of focus into India. It's pouring European ideas and trade and things that will benefit Britain into this country and extracting and utilizing the people the best way to go over and extract the most from this region. The natives, many of the natives are sort of, you know, they got a choice. Either they go along with it or they're going to, you know, not benefit at all. They'll have even more hardship. They can run away to another part. They can get out of that region, go elsewhere. But many of them try to assimilate. They try to find a way of marrying the two cultures or the different cultures, trying to get along, so to speak, with British traditions. The natives start to fill the British ranks in the British military. That gives Britain a huge army right in the middle of the Indian Ocean, halfway across the Eastern Hemisphere. So that's giving Britain a lot of power, a lot more possibilities. It's opening up some possibilities for them because they no longer have to deal a fight with just the men that they have. They can fight with these several million people that are part of the land that they are taking over in India. Here's an example of what I mean. This particular gentleman is Ram Mohan Roy. He was a Hindu, if I'm remembering everything. I believe he's Hindu, but he was an incredibly intelligent man. He spoke multiple languages fluently, and was very, very bright. In 1809, he wrote in his letter, he says, "The British government is, quote, milder, more enlightened, and more liberal than the Mughal." So it's a positive. He's seeing that this is a positive move for his people. But yet later, that attitude, that perspective shifts, it changes. Because what happens is as Britain moves in and takes control, for whatever reason, they end up putting their people in places of power, in places of influence. And they're not allowing these Hindu and Muslim people from these regions to fully assimilate and take responsibilities at higher levels. Instead, they're left down, and that's what he says. He says that the better classes of the natives of India are placed under the sway of the Honorable East India Company in a state of political degradation which is absolutely without parallel in their former history. Now, he's referring to Hindus at this time. For even under the Mohammedan conquerors, that's the Muslim conquerors, the Mughal conquerors, such of your petitioners as are Hindus, were not only capable of filling, but actually did fill numerous employments of trust, dignity, and emolument. Now this means those are the lifted, those are the higher up places. Even under the Muslim reign, the Hindus were allowed to assume greater and greater roles and greater positions of dignity and trust and power. However, for which under the existing system of the honorable companies, that's back to the British government, they are absolutely shut out. So the attitude at first is, oh, it's better. And as the British sort of progressed and took more and more and dominated more and more, the folks that were there, the native folks, ended up becoming more and more impressed and less representative. And this is going to build some really, really big tensions moving into the 1830s to 1860s, which is where we're going in our next topic. So all that's left now is a wrap up. I want to take one more little video to sort of take a look at the world as a whole. Lots has happened. American Revolution, French Revolution, Napoleonic Wars, Latin American has completely changed. Britain has decided it's going to go back to India and start building its new empire. Much has happened as we enter this new time, the 1830s to about the 1860s or so. And we need to take a look at what is sort of been laid out. We need to look at those new situations from different perspectives and anticipate what is the next thing that is going to happen. Who is going to be the next mover and shakers in our world history? Take care.